All right. All right. So we're live. Welcome, everyone. This is such a treat for me. And I am just blessed to have you all as my friends and to know you. And I get the great privilege of introducing you to everyone out there during Pride Month. Ladies and gentlemen, these men and women are veterans of the Stonewall Rebellion in 1969. These are the men and women who were at the Stonewall Inn during the police raids, which were multi-days. And each of them has a story to tell us. So while young people out there, raise the pride flag and announce proudly that they're gay, I want you to know that it would not be the case without these men and women who are on the screen today. So you all have an opportunity to ask questions. Just type on your screen and we'll see them here and we'll answer them for you. But I'd like to start by introducing Anthony Carone. Anthony, how are you?
Well, I'm doing well. I'm out here in the Hamptons, and the day was pleasant. I'm sitting on the porch, and I think the bugs are going to start biting. But other than that, everything's terrific.
well, hopefully, a little off spray maybe will help you out.
Right.
And then, of course, we have David Bermudez and Robert Isidore, who are the grand marshals this year of the Pride Parade in your community. How are you, gentlemen?
Fine.
Good. How are you?
I was going to say something, I know that they've had a lot of problems in New York, parade and all. Massachusetts, I want everybody to know this, okay, is the greatest and the most loving people when it comes to pride. Not only pride, Stonewall, they're just crazy about Stonewall. They're so loving and caring, that they had a thing this past weekend with hamburgers and drinks, and they had a band and all. And they had a small march in a town over here, and they're just so proud. And I want everybody to know that Massachusetts is just there for us, for all of us.
That's wonderful. It's so nice, especially nowadays, to hear good news and people being welcoming. So, but then again, who could not love you guys? You are just fantastic. You're wonderful people, and I think you're well loved everywhere. Okay, we're just joined by Rusty Rose. How are you, Rusty?
Hello, Rosie.
Hi, Rusty. Hello, everyone. Hey, Christy. Hi. My screen is a little blurry because I'm having some complication with the screen, but I'm still here.
She's beautiful and mysterious behind the soft.
I was going to say that these ears on back of me, they're not mine.
Okay. Well, I live in sunny California now.
It's
wonderful. What part of California do you live in?
I live in Palmdale, California. I miss New York, but I don't miss those harsh winters. And by me having bronchitis and all the condition, the cool weather was not good for me, so I had to leave New York. And it's a much warmer climate here, so I'm much better. And I'll be turning 76.
Oh, no, you won't either. You look fantastic. Holy moly. Terrific.
Hi, Rusty, my best friend.
Bob and I lived in California for how many years?
10.
You know the Silicon Valley?
Yes, I have family living there. I live out there.
Yeah, I loved it,
Yeah.
But I got a little funny when that earthquake in the 80s.
Yeah, it was scary.
Florida. So we started finding another. We moved to New England.
Well, when there's ever an earthquake here, I just grab my partner and we shake it together. But it's not that, it's very rare that they come, really. People don't.
Thank goodness for that. So, Rusty, where are you joining us from tonight?
I'm joining you from Babylon, Long Island.
Oh,
So So we're and our fearless leader, Wilson Henderson, who was here, he seems to be having technical issues. He keeps on popping in and out. So hopefully
I
he'll
just
get
lost
those
you.
resolved. And he'll be able to join us. But I wanted to, okay, Billy D is here. So say hello to Billy D, and he's watching. And
Hello,
great
Billy.
to have you with us.
Hi, Billy.
Hi, Billy.
So I wanted to start. Here we go. Here we go. Hopefully he's gonna be okay. There he is.
Hey.
Oh no. Wilson, unmute your microphone. You have to unmute. Wilson, can you hear me? Unmute your microphone. Uh-oh.
No.
No, it's not. It's not good. It's not good. I don't know why we're having a problem. I can't unmute his microphone. He has to do it himself. And that if you just use your mouse, Wilson, and click on the microphone, you should be able to do that. Okay. Well, at any rate, while Wilson tries to figure that out, I'd like to ask you all. I think I'll lead the conversation a little bit and ask you some things that I know I'd like to know, and I'm sure that our viewers would like to know, especially for the young people out there today. Maybe you can enlighten us, and we can just go around the screen. Okay, we'll start with Anthony and David and Bob, and then Wilson and Rusty and Christy, or whoever wants to jump in. But can you tell us what was it like in high school, going to high school, and especially in the last century, before gay liberation and pride? How was it for you? Were you out then? And if you weren't out then, when did you come out? So,
Is that to me?
yes, Anthony.
Okay, I'll take it. Well, high school, I was a preppy. I went to prep school and all boys school. And if you are trying to be straight, that's kind of a tough environment to be straight in. And I was trying to figure out how to be proud of myself and be gay, well, gay wasn't really the term at the time. Clearly, it was not an acceptable behavior. And actually, I transferred to Manhasset High School in order to have a more mixed class to sort of see whether I really was gay or straight. So that was odd. The headmaster gave me a lot of grief at the time. He said I was throwing my life away. But anyway, I had the experience of going to high school, and there just was nothing, to my knowledge, there was nothing gay going on. This was in Manhasset. Maybe in the city it was a little different, but out in Long Island it was pretty straight.
It wasn't discussed. It wasn't a subject. It wasn't.
No, it was ridiculed, if anything.
Yeah. Yeah. David, Rob,
and there were no role models, really. I mean, the only time you saw a role model was some seedy, drunk old man, leadering at children and that sort of thing. And I thought, my God, I don't want that to be my future. So maybe there is something wrong with being gay.
Right. That must have been tough. I mean, and especially high school is tough enough, right? It's tough for everybody. Right? It doesn't matter. And then to have to hide who you are, I can only imagine the anxiety on top of that and the stress on top of that.
Well, I think the message, because in prep school you're groomed for all the elevated professions, and it was clear to me. I mean, it was made clear to me that gay people were not allowed to be teachers, were not allowed to be in the military, were not allowed to be in the legal professions. I mean, really, there was not much you could look forward to if you were declared gay, other than maybe being a hairdresser or working in a floral shop or something. So, yeah, it kind of was a big conflict. If you go through the rigorous studies to be some specialized profession, you knew you had to keep it a secret.
Wow. Wow. Gentlemen, David, Bob, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I actually went to an all-male high school as well. Father Diamond, which could have been pretty tricky, when you're going to a school with a Catholic base. But I grew up in a town, Fall River, Massachusetts, and they didn't even have a gay bar. Never mind come out and say you were gay.
Right.
I kind of knew I was, but I wasn't sure. As Anthony said, you're in that kind of age bracket where, is this something I want to experiment, or is it something I really feel? Or after that, I went into the U.S. Army, and again, obviously, I enlisted as a straight man because you couldn't say you were gay then either.
Right.
So it wasn't until after I was discharged from the service where I found that I could be a little more myself. But again, in the town that I was in, again, even into the mid 60s, they still didn't have a gay bar, believe it or not.
Wow.
And finally, I ended up heading to New York, and that's where I really found my freedom, put away.
Wow.
Mhm.
Wow. Amazing. Anyone else want to take hold of that question?
Yeah, I'll say something. One of the things that I remember more than a gay thing, all right? Number one, my father was a minister, okay, and we got along real well. My family, where I was brought up with, were Puerto Ricans, even though my father was from Spain, and I was brought up in the Bronx. How can you say about the Bronx in New York, right?
Right.
But the thing is that my sister and I, we went through not hell, but we went through a few things in school because we were Puerto Ricans. And at that time, Anthony, you know this, we were called spics, you know?
Yep.
Now, in that time, too, a lot of people saw Puerto Ricans black, right? And they see these two white kids, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it got around, you know what I'm saying? So I had more problems with that than I had of the gay thing. You know what I'm saying?
Wow.
And I was brought up in the part of the Bronx with Italians. That's why I know a lot of your food, honey, and Irish. And then later on, it changed. But the thing is, when I was growing up, I didn't really think of anything like that, Then when I became a teenager and I left home when I was 15 years old, by the way. And then I started meeting, gay guys and all that. I still, to me, I dated girls. I still dated girls. I got married, remember I told you?
Yes.
And, but when I started really knowing more about the gay world was the 60s. That's why it's Stonewall, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's where we used to go there. It was a bar that everybody went to, it was a wonderful mixed bar, dancing, the whole bit. And actually, Williamson can tell you this. Nobody said, I'm a
gay.
lesbian or I'm gay or I'm a transgender or no. We knew drag queens. We had the most beautiful drag queens you could ever find. And that's how I really started coming out,
Yeah.
And, that's the only problem I had as a gay man. That's all. It wasn't as a young boy, and it wasn't anybody teasing me or that. They mostly teased my sister and I because we were Puerto Ricans. So they used to call us spics and all that, even though they used to think that we were darker people and all that. Somebody did something,
Yeah.
until they met my grandmother. Oh, get it? She ended it.
Oh, Christy, do you want to jump in here?
Well, I've been a transgender from ever since. Well, in those days, they didn't call you transgender. You could say cross dresser since I was 5 years old.
Right.
Yeah.
And so when I went to high school, I went there as a girl. But the problem was, I dressed as close as the girl as I could. And out of 7 African Americans, I was only 7 of us, and I integrated an all-white school.
Yeah, right.
Which is very difficult being African American at that time and also being a trans.
Right.
But unfortunately, I had some good advocates. There was a boy there who protected me, and because we all were being discriminated against for being Black, we had to bond together, whether I was trans or not. We all stuck together. Right. So we would take each other's cars. Our parents had to give us cars and to go to school because we'd get beat down because we were Black. So that's one thing. But I challenged the school way back. I can remember I was in high school. They told me not to wear makeup and told me not. I was fascinated with Diana Ross. And I used to wear my hair and swing it all the time and wear makeup to school and dress as close to a girl as I could. So I got challenged and they called me in the office and said, Christy, then it was Chris, you can't wear all this makeup because it's only for women and girls. So guess what this smart little chick did? I went and challenged and got all kinds of books. And I wanted them to show me where it says that makeup is for women only. And they couldn't find it. So they said, I started wearing, so the principal asked me, well, can you just tone it down just a little bit? So he said I could still wear my makeup. So I stood up for my rights even then as a trans.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then they allowed me to go to the staff bathroom in those days. Because, so I was very lucky in that sense. And it was an all-white school in Maryville. And I was one of the only out of 7 Blacks. And but I was very surprised how supportive the principal was. And especially in those, we're talking about in the early 60s.
Yeah. And
so it was wonderful. But we still had to deal with racism. If you weren't gay, if you weren't trans or drag queen, I think they call you more drag queen those days.
Right.
You were substance to discrimination, just being Black for one thing, and then being gay and trans, that was a harder battle.
Yeah.
But I challenged my school and they let me wear my makeup.
Good.
How were the kids? How did the kids react to you?
Well, we mostly congregated, the Black kids only congregated with each other. We didn't associate much with the white kids because they were very racist.
Okay.
Maybe 1 or 2 might try to sneak around and try to talk to you, but it was a very racist school. Maryville was considered an affluent school, all white, and my parents happened to move in Maryville. And so she wanted a better life for her children. So we moved to an all-white neighborhood.
Okay.
And that was also a task. And so I had to wind up going to school. No, there never was anything that changed, but we just stuck by each other and we went to school.
Perfect.
You were accepted even by the Black children.
Mainly. Well, some of the guys, well, let me tell you, it was only 7 of us.
Right.
And I believe it was, I want to say 2 girls and 5 boys. And so they used to tease me and say, now it's 3 girls and 4 boys. So they would, so they did adjust to it. And one of the guys who protected all of us said, well, I know what Chris is trans or gay, whatever they said, but she's still Black, so we got to protect her. So I think they more because I was Black, African American, is why they bonded with me.
Right. Yeah. Got it. That's interesting. I mean, it's interesting that both of your stories are that your discrimination wasn't about your sexuality,
right,
but about your heritage. In the 60s, and I think we can learn something from that. That's very, very, very interesting, especially in New York, where it's.
Well, I wasn't in New York at that time.
Oh, okay.
I was living in Arizona.
I
ran to New York, and when I was like 14 in the summer, 13 or 14, that's how I met Marsha and Sylvia at that time.
Oh, good. All right, Wilson, it looks like you're unmuted and we can talk to you now. Can we hear you?
That's good. It took a while to unmute it. But anyway, perhaps it would be after 15 minutes stating that this is sponsored by the Stonewall Rebellion Veteran Association. Nobody's mentioned that. The reason that we're all here. And going back to high school, which you asked before, I didn't have a bad experience at all. In fact, it was very positive. I went with several different down low. Well, they weren't down low. They were in the closet guys who are actually straight.
Mhm.
And I'm still in touch with two of them. One is married and the other isn't. But it was just down low, but it certainly existed big time. And then when the Magic Touch opened out in Long Island, in Long Beach Island Park area, we used to go there, and we brought straight girls there, types like you, Letitia, you know, Italian and also Jewish, with loads of makeup. So it was very
Is there a
harmonious.
shot at my makeup?
Well, you would have fit right into the Stonewall Club. And, you know, with the Ronettes hairdo and the beehive, I could picture you in that. So, but it was, it slowly developed where people like came out. But the gay clubs were plentiful, not only in Manhattan, but Long Island. That's the two areas I were. And at the Stonewall Club, I have to say the original Stonewall Club, a lot of people came there from Connecticut and Pennsylvania, and of course, New Jersey.
Wow. Well,
So, and also, if anyone who's listening that wants to go to our website, it is www.stonewallvets.org. Again, www.stonewallvets.org.
excellent. And there's a Stonewall GoFundMe too. So you should
Well,
go
you
over to.
could. Oh yeah, that link is on the website, on the Stonewall Rebellion Veteran Association website.
Okay. And there's some great music there, and great photos, great history. So, well, we're glad that you're unmuted, and we're glad that you can now speak, and we're glad that you cleared us all up on who is sponsoring the show and why we're here. But Rusty, we haven't heard from you, so maybe you want to unmute yourself and tell us a bit about your high school years.
I had mixed experiences like everyone here. I came from Brooklyn, Italian Jewish neighborhood. When I came to Long Island, I wasn't accepted here. They called me WAP, and they called me other things because I talk funny. They were pretty snobby and standoffish. I did have a girlfriend in my high school, but I also had a boyfriend because I had a father said that you're going to either get married or go out in the box. Yeah, my dad was a strong guy. He was a businessman, but he was also a boxer, so you didn't mess with that. But you didn't speak about it, out loud, in the 50s and 60s. You could confide in some friends. I know that several friends I came out to, they got up and left. They didn't want nothing to do with me. So, like Wilson said too, you would take straight friends and everything, go to the bars. Long Island had a lot of bars at the time too.
Yep.
Yeah, they would, growing. They were in the woods. They were here and there. But
Rusty, did you ever go to the Magic Touch?
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah,
the Central and Charties and Between Us and Forever
Stars.
Green and, the Silver Lining. They just went on and on. Mach 5, I think.
Kiss.
Yes, Kiss.
So you broached the subject of family. I mean, how for everyone here, how did your family react when they learned you were gay?
Well, my father, he wanted to kill my girlfriend.
Wow.
I mean, Italian family,
Yeah.
My father was very strict family,
How about you, Anthony?
Well, my family wasn't really happy with it when I finally came out. Now, I was a late bloomer from the sound of it compared to the rest of you folks. I went through college still kind of trying to cure myself. I was really bisexual for most of the time and not having an awful lot of experience, with guys. And it wasn't until after college that my college roommate visited me in New York and showed me the Stonewall and told me that he was gay and he was afraid he would lose me as a friend. And believe it or not, I was still hesitant to tell him that I thought I was gay. But anyway, that story gets even more complicated because the following visit to the Stonewall, when I finally decided I was gay, was the night it was raided.
Oh,
So
Tell us about it. Tell us about it.
how's that for an irony? Well,
so the first that you finally decide that you're going to come out, and you go there
at the ripe old age of 27. I was on Wall Street. I was a pretty sophisticated job of catching criminals on Wall Street, and I took a long vacation, and I was out in Hong Kong for a while. And I actually had my first experience with a guy that lasted for almost 2 weeks. Because I always thought being gay meant it was a one-shot affair. And so I actually had a relationship, and it was wonderful. And on the way back, it's a long plane ride. And on the way back, I kept thinking to myself, gee, I can be proud of myself and be gay. Yeah. So, I kind of had that long plane ride thinking that it was no longer shameful for me to enjoy being gay. And I had to work late that Friday night when I got back to New York, very late, because I'd taken too much vacation time. And I was still in my three-piece suit when I went to Stonewall. And I got my 2 drink tickets, got a lousy drink. I backed myself into one of those columns there by the bar, and I looked at the dance floor, and I said, "My God, what a mishmash of people! This is so much fun." I really felt a part of it. It was no longer me looking at the gay community the way a scientist might look through a microscope, at amoeba. That I said, I'm part of this. This is who I am. And while I didn't even get my second drink, and all of a sudden the lights came on and the cops came in and raided the place, which kind of spoiled my evening. But anyway, that's how that. That's how. Yeah. But
what did you think, though, Anthony? I mean, were you terrified, or you finally come to peace with who you were and you were being yourself, and now all of a sudden the lights go on, the cops come in? How'd you feel?
Well, I was outraged, actually. And I stood there looking at this and I said, this is, well, forgive my language, this is kind of fucked up. Okay. And I had a good year on Wall Street, and I had paid a lot of taxes. And I said, these people I'm paying their salary. And so after a while, I saw what they were doing, and they were scaring the hell out of the kids. And some of them were going, I think, into the bathroom, jumping out the window or something. I don't know, but there was a panic situation. They were lining everyone up, checking IDs and everything. And of course, I read a lot because I was on Wall Street. And for some reason, I had the courage to go over to the cops and say, what are you doing?
Yeah.
What are you doing? He said, what the hell are you? Are you a lawyer? And I said, don't you know that the Supreme Court overturned the vagrancy laws and you do not have to present identification? That's not. He said, guy's a fucking lawyer. Let him out. And so they stopped doing that. And all of a sudden everybody's going out in the street. And so in a sense, they lost crowd control. And we were all pushed out in the street. And of course, by then, there was nowhere to go. The street was absolutely jam full of people, and the cops kept yelling at, "Move on, move on, move on," and nobody was moving on, and it turned into a real screw you. No, we're not moving on.
Yeah.
And anyway, that was kind of my I guess coming out night. And
You're
so
coming out. You're coming out raid.
yeah. So I stayed there, sort of trying to figure out what's next, and it really got out of hand, and I guess the transvestites or what, I mean, I don't even have my terminology
That's
well
okay.
here, but they were bringing out the cross dressers and putting them in the vans,
Right.
and somebody who I guess might have been Stormy DeLavery. I don't know. I thought it was a guy.
No,
was
Stormy
basically-
was the vice president of the Stonewall Veteran Association.
Well, whatever. And that's all, to me, that's blah, 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 because I was there. I didn't know anybody from anybody. I just saw the
since
cops
the rebellion.
rounding up the club, putting in the cross dressers, and it was starting to get a little bit rough. And this one person I thought was a guy said, "What's the matter with you people? You love guys, but you don't act like guys." Something like that. And somehow, all of a sudden, people started throwing things at the cops. And pocket change, whatever. And then eventually, of course, we dove into the waste baskets and started throwing whatever we could find there. But it then became, I guess that the rebellion became more of a riot, maybe. I don't know. I think the police are the ones that rioted. But we were rebelling against what had just happened.
Right.
Yeah. That's, I mean, Rusty, I know that you had a bird's eye view of what was going on there. Do you want to give us your account?
Well, I had been all day in the village. I was singing at the time, rock and roll and blues, and I was in the Washington Square with Marcia, and Sylvia, and Christy, and other people and everything, and then Vinny, the Anthony you're describing, Vinny. Mm-hmm. And Vinny said to me, "There's a new club," which I didn't know nothing about the Stonewall. "Would you like to go later on?" And so I met him, and we wound up walking to the Stonewall, and we were in there, I would say, I don't know, not even an hour. I was from the front of the bar to the middle. We hung that way, and then we go dance once in a while. And it was in that short while, and when the plainclothes came in, went one way, went another way, where there was a coat rack, and went that way and pulled out some people, I guess, who worked there. And there were words, and we, screamed back at them and everything. And he did ask, like Anthony said, show your ID. And then after a while, he dropped the ID and then let a whole bunch of, kids out. But I was kept behind, because Vinny was dressed inappropriately at the time, looked mannish. I had a guy's shirt on, and you had the, like at the time they called them with the not trans, but they were kept back. The drag queens were kept back, and we resisted. We were not going to the bathroom. We were not going to be checked at the bathroom.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so we were fighting inside. But I was told later on that the kids who were, in the club and all the passerby them all, gathered there. But from the inside, after a while, you could hear the pounding on the middle door, the wooden door, the pounding, and then boom on the glass, and the glass broke by the bar side, because on the other side where the office or whatever that was, there was a coat rack, and I think it was a coat room. I don't know. I didn't walk around the Stonewall, and it was really intense. And then, of course, the second wave came in, the uniform officers.
Yeah.
Were hitting us with billy clubs along with everything else, furniture and everything, whatever else they could hit in the place.
Yeah.
So
Very
By the way,
traumatic. Very traumatic.
I'd like to add at this point that a lot of the young people who don't understand much of anything about what it was like 50, 60, some odd years ago, that bathroom check routine was because the law actually made it illegal to be wearing 3 pieces of inappropriate clothing. And I think that's the that was the gimmick that the police were using at the time.
Yeah, you were the age, Anthony, of Vinny that I went with. I was 10 years younger. So, 17 I was at the time. Vinny was I would say about 27. And so, and when we got out, it was Vinny too. It was talking about something like similar to what you said, or something I don't recall, but like, come on, help me here, asking the crowd to help him.
Right.
And at the time, I jumped on an officer, grazed him in the eye. And then another kid was being knee dropped, a blonde kid, closer to the bricks, the front of the Stonewall, closer to the, what is that, 7th Avenue, where the village, where the Duchess then was afterward. That I ran up that way, and the cop caught me, and I think that was Frank. Frank Toscano.
So, were you arrested?
No, I wasn't arrested.
Was anybody here arrested?
I was, and I have the mugshot too, as you know. Here it is, on the cover of one of our CDs.
There you go.
Can you
No,
see?
she was arrested.
So, Christy, tell us what happened with you.
Well, originally I came to Stonewall. I'm not a patron of Stonewall, by the way. But Johanna, I don't know if anybody remembers her. She was having a birthday party in the back. So I decided, and I was supposed to meet Marsha and Sylvia there, but they were not there. So when I got in the club, I saw Rusty, because I met her at the park. And I spoke to Rusty and Vinny. So I walked towards, because most of the drag queens went towards the back near the jukebox at that time. And so I spoke to her. On my way out, I noticed that the uprising started. And then they were fighting with Vinny and Rusty. So the officer let me out of the door.
Wow.
He said, "What are you, a man or a woman?" And so in those days, they wouldn't let a man search you. They had to get a woman officer.
Right.
So in order for me not to go there embarrassed, I just told them I was a drag queen. So I was arrested the first night of Stonewall. And the only reason why I ever went to Stonewall, I really didn't like Stonewall, actually, because I didn't like how they treated African Americans, in my opinion. Okay. But at that time, I decided to go to meet Marsha and Sylvia, and they were not there. I spoke to Rusty and Benny, and before I can get out, the officers started barricading. They started to come in and started harassing people. And so that was one of the reasons how I actually wound up at Stonewall, going to a birthday party in the back for drag queen named Johanna. Right. And then on my way out, speaking to Rusty and Vinny, they let me out the door. Before I can get anywhere, they arrest me because I was dressed as a total female.
Okay.
And I got arrested for the 3 strikes law. You had to have 3 clothing of male, and I didn't have any. And so I was arrested that very night, taking, I believe it was the 6th precinct somewhere. Can't remember, it's been so long.
Right.
But that's how I wound up at Stonewall, by a birthday party that's supposed to be there in the back.
But so after you were arrested, did you have to get a lawyer? Did you have to go to court? How'd that wind up for you?
Well, first of all, I had no support from my parents because they were against me.
Okay.
So I wind up from being arrested at Stonewall to wind up in the hospital because they thought I was crazy because I wanted to be a woman.
Oh,
And
okay.
so I woke up in the mid. I had gotten arrested, and then I wound up with a appendix problem. So they rushed me to the hospital in Bellevue from the jail. And by the way, Marsha and Sylvia came to see me in jail that night, that day, next day, because I got around Stonewall, I guess about, I want to say 12:30, maybe 1. Wasn't the uprising didn't start until, I think, in my memory, at least like 1 or 2. But after being arrested, the next day, Marsha and Sylvia did come to jail to try to get me out. But my mother, they called it, but she didn't want me out. She thought that this was a lesson for me being a cross-dresser. This was her way of punishing me.
Right.
My mother didn't accept me at all. But in the process of being arrested, my appendix bust. And so I had to be rushed from the jail to Bellevue Hospital. And I woke up after surgery, thrown in the mental institution. So that's my experience with Stonewall. I didn't like, in my opinion, everybody has their own story. I didn't like how they treated African Americans at that time.
Right. So the case, because you went to the hospital, the reason I'm asking this and I'm trying to dive deep in this is that I don't think that young people realize the laws that were on the books that that really destroyed lives, right? And we're talking about New York City, right, where anything goes. And these laws were there in New York City. And also, though, the fact that being gay, they classified it as a mental disorder, and people were allowed to and were committed for being gay. So that's why I'm diving deep. So did they drop the charges against you, Christy, or did you have to go through court?
Well, thanks to Marsha and Sylvia and Arthur Bell, they fought for my freedom. Because they did later, they never did really drop the charges of masquerading. They call it masquerading, actually. No, they didn't. But let me tell you how I actually wound up in New York, by the way. My mother used to send me to New York because I was a separation. My mother lived in Arizona. We lived in Philadelphia before we went there. So my father lived in New York. So I would go to New York every year, summertime, 12, 13. But my father didn't accept it. But you know how you always have a family? My aunt did. So I wound up staying with my aunt and hanging out in the street, basically being a homeless child, basically. And that's how I met Sylvia and Marsha. They became my mentor and my mom. Even though Sylvia is younger than me, Marsha really became my big mother to me.
Yeah.
And she's like 4 or 5 years older than I am.
Okay.
So I would have never went to Stonewall if they hadn't told me they were going to be there.
Right.
I went there for Johanna's birthday.
Right.
And she was just turning, I believe, 18. A lot of us was very young going in Stonewall. And they never questioned you, ask you for ID or anything, not that I can remember. And
and that's the other thing is that, people talk about Stonewall, they talk about Pride, they talk about all of this, nowadays. They don't realize that the people that turned everything upside down and liberated people to be who they are were teenagers. Most of them were teenagers. I mean, Anthony was 27. Well, for God's sakes, you could still stay and living with your mother and being on insurance at 26 these days. So, I mean, it's amazing that a bunch of teenagers, a bunch of young people changed the world because they had enough. So who wants to go next? Who wants to tell me their Stonewall story?
Well, I will comment because to frame it for anyone that's listening to this, there's been no date given or some other crucial particulars as to why the rebellion started that night. That day was Friday, June 27, in Greenwich Village, Manhattan, New York City. And it was a very warm, hot day. And it was that night, and high schools had just gotten out that day, and colleges were already out for a week. So therefore, it brought more people into that area. And Christopher Street was and is the gayest street in the world anyway. And plus, what nobody's mentioned is a little surprising. The big news that day was not this. There were no media there. There was no TV or newspapers. The big news that whole week was that Judy Garland, the gay icon, had died, and her funeral was in Manhattan that very day from Campbell's Funeral Home and then St. Patrick's Cathedral. Even the Kennedys were there. And that's where I and many of my friends were at Judy's funeral. Surprising no one mentioned it. She was only 47. And that after the funeral, we went down to the Village, of course, and went to 2 different restaurants, actually, and had a few drinks before we went over to the Stonewall Club, which we went early because we're already in Manhattan. And the club looked like a chapel because so many people brought the little votive candles, and then the rainbow candles, have been around forever. So it looked like a chapel more than a club. There were candles lit all over the place. And of course, the Mafia men were smart to have a couple of Judy's records in the jukebox. So they were played like crazy that whole evening. And once the club reopened also. So that's how it started that Friday evening. And by the way, as Rusty knows, they had started infiltrating the club that evening. They were undercover cops. You know that, right, Rusty?
You're muted, Rusty. Unmute your.
Yeah, because when Vinny and we were at, in the front, I'm just going to briefly say, and Vinny was a regular there. So his eyes looked at this woman who came in, didn't look, I was hippie dressed and didn't look the part, and said, come on, let's dance, and was eyeballing this person. Then that went out. I think that was a female officer probably. And then about, I don't know, minutes to half hour, then the others came in. But yes, they were casing the play. They were in and out.
They had 2 female undercover cops and definitely 2 males. And they were there quite early Friday evening. So that's really when it started. And then they had some special division police unit that came down with the actual raid because it had been exposed that the local cops were taking payoffs from the gay clubs, especially the Stonewall Club, which was the most popular. So they wanted to put an end to the cop payoffs. That's what motivated them. Of course, they picked the wrong night. Judy Garland's funeral, unbelievable, really. That was stupid, which they admitted many times since. And by the way, we're still in touch with several of 3 of the actual Stonewall cops from that time. And we even have a picture from a few years ago showing Rusty with 3 of the Stonewall cops. Remember for the documentary, Rosie? Well, who did that? Well, Rosie Mendez was there. That's what I was thinking of with the interviews. And that's supposed to come out. It's a documentary called Stonewall, Inside Stonewall.
Oh.
Okay. Well, so, and then the police actually apologized, right?
Yes, they did.
Eventually.
Yeah.
May I contribute something? I'd like to expand on what Wilson said. I mean, of course, Judy Garland died, and of course there was the funeral on Friday, and the gay community was upset about that.
Very.
That's not the reason I was at the Stonewall, which is irrelevant, I suppose. But the point, I think, also needs to be remembered. It was a political season, and traditionally in New York, raids of all the queer, the streetwalkers and the queer bars and all of that stuff was a tradition in Manhattan. And it was an election season. So that's the big motivator. And I think I understand that the Stonewall had been raided
Or
a week or two
Many
before.
times.
a week
For
before.
4 years.
And the typical routine was, as I later understood, the cops would they would tip off the bar. The mafia. They had advanced knowledge, but this particular night, they didn't play the game the way the game was traditionally played. And but the point I just want to interject is that it was, Judy Garland only got to die once, but gay bar raids were a tradition every time it was political season. So there was the combination of those two things that I think made it particularly volatile.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And
Leticia,
so Lindsay was there.
I'm going to jump in on something.
Yeah.
I was not at Stonewall that night, but obviously David was. And there's one story I always remember, and Wilson obviously will remember it too. David told me when he was trying
Bob,
to get.
can you speak up a little louder? It's hard to hear you for some reason.
You can't hear me? Can you hear me now?
I said it's hard to hear you. I
Okay.
can hear everybody else clear. Just speak up a little louder. That's all.
Okay. When David was fighting his way out of the Stonewall, he always told me the story. Right at the entrance, a cop had this young man with a billy club around his neck, and he was really choking him. And David said, "My God, they're going to kill that guy." He grabbed the cop, and when he did that, David got whacked over the head with a billy club. But years later, when we first met Williamson, we met at the hamburger place, remember? In Manhattan. David said, "Gee, I know that guy." And David told him the story. And Williamson said, "I was that guy." It was Williamson that was being choked by the cop on the front of the entrance of the Stonewall.
And thrown on the ground too.
Yeah. And to add, many years later, David was in the hospital. He had a brain tumor. And the doctor asked him if he ever was hit on the head.
Yeah.
And David kept on saying, no. He said, because this took many years to grow. And then all of a sudden it dawned on him, the night of the Stonewall, he was hit in the head twice. First in the time he was trying to pull Williamson up. So,
Wow.
I wanted to say something. As far as coming out, okay, being Latino or Italian, right? Nobody ever talked about that. That's why I was married and all that. Never went out with guys and all that. But I met this Italian guy, very good-looking Italian guy. They lived in Pennsylvania in Hershey. His family owned an Italian restaurant, and we got together for a while, and it was real nice and all that. And I thought, well, I found my niche, now I don't have to worry and all that, So I used to go to Puerto Rico a lot to visit the family. And while I was in Puerto Rico and I came back, my doorman says to me, "There's somebody waiting for you, Dave. Somebody has to talk with you." And I said, "Okay." I had a very dear friend of mine. His name was Barry McCall. And he said, "Let's go upstairs." I said, "All right." Went upstairs and he told me that he went into a hotel with two guys and they shot up. And he was found dead in the hotel room. And it was so hard for me because I thought, my life, it's great. I have somebody, I'm going to be fine. And here this is happening. I went through emotions for over 2 years, really bad. And talking about family, they never talked. My sister Ruthie was together, and I tried committing suicide. And I was sent to Roseville Hospital. They found me in this room. And I opened up my eyes and my sister was sitting there. She was living in Connecticut. And she says, "What's wrong with you?" And I looked at her and said, "You don't understand where I'm coming from." And she just looked at me and says, "David, I'm your sister. I've always known about you. We never talked about it." So I says to her, "Well, and then why did you let me get married?" And she says, "You know, David, we know you. You're a typical New Yorker. You would tell us, right? I says, well, that's how I came out to my sister-in-law. They were fine. Everybody was fine. A few years passed, and I met this man, right? I lived in Gramercy Park. That's where I had a place. I was a designer, and I didn't pay a bill, so they called me up, David. I said, "Oh, I'll be right over. I'll be right over." No, it was Saturday, and they said, No, Dave, no. You come over Monday or whatever." No, no, no. So I told my doorman to watch me because I had cash. New York.
Yeah.
And I'm going towards 14th Street, and there was a chock full of nuts on 14th Street, right?
That's right.
And a Klein's, was it a Klein's, that big building?
Maze?
One of those big buildings. And there was a phone booth. Now, we all know what a phone booth was.
Well, we all know, but some of the people at home watching might not know.
There wasn't a phone in front of our face, no. And I looked and I went, and I left it alone. So I walked into the chock full of nuts. I ordered 2 coffees, 2 pies, 2, how they were, right? All that. And he was a smoker. And I said, "Hello, this is for a friend of mine," and he disappeared. I went, "Oh shit! All right, fine." I went across the street to one of these
Your bill.
to pay my bill. I got a reel-to-reel because I was performing and I needed rehearsal, so I bought a reel-to-reel. And I walked inside, and he's in there. And I go, "Whoa, how did that happen?" So I left it alone. When I was going out, I says, "Hey, do you like stereos?" And he says, "Duh. What am I doing in here?" You know what I mean? That's how we met. We are celebrating this year 51 years.
Oh,
51 years we're celebrating.
Incredible.
So now, to go back 69, because this was in the 70s. I wanted to be in show business so badly, and I knew a lot of show kids and all that. And I used to get into plays once in a while. And we loved Judy Garland, Carnegie Hall, the whole, she was just wonderful. And we know she was an alcoholic. And we know she loved her, And we found
And we
out,
know she was extremely talented.
Oh, no, she was wonderful.
And passionate.
Exactly. You're right. So I was living in this apartment, and I had those little radios we used to have, a little
transistor radio.
Yeah, the little ones, little radios, portables, And we were across the street, on the grass, talking and all. We heard Judy Garland has just passed in London with an overdose, you know what I mean? And we went, whoa, all of us, So then we found out that she was going to be laid out in Campbell's funeral parlor. We went, okay. So we went, it was thousands of people. I mean, thousands. A friend of mine was in show business who was one of the dancers of her shows. Hey, David, come on with me. I says, okay. And he got me through the back, and I saw her. She was very tiny. She was in a little coffin, glass top. They had a glass top on her, and she didn't look like her either. So I went and I said, oh, she didn't die. So we left. I was in the YMCA at that time, because in New York City, when you visit and all that, mostly you stay at the Y or a friend's house and all that. And I got a phone call, 10 o'clock. David, let's go celebrate Judy Garland's life. And I went, no way. What are you talking about? Well, we left it alone. I get another phone call about 11 o'clock. I went, oh, all right. So, I said, okay, we go. We have a drink, and I'm coming back. I'm leaving the Y tomorrow. I got an apartment. We go there. We hit some bars, the whole bit. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. As he says, it was a beautiful moonlit night. Really, it was. 1 o'clock shows up, and I went, I gotta go back. I'm moving. The YMCA had to be out by 11 o'clock. So I went ahead, and they said, okay, go in the subway, Dave. 14th Street, right? And I was on 64th Street, not at 1 o'clock in the morning. I said, okay. And across the street was the Stonewall, across the street. And let's go have a drink there. All right. So we went there, and like what's his name was saying, that night, I don't remember showing the ID or anything, but I was Latino, an Italian guy, and a black guy. And the back of the bar, there was a little nook in back of the bar with a bench inside and all that. We always went in there, and then a boy would walk around and, what do you want to drink? And I always drank beer because I heard the drinks were really bad. You know what I mean? And it was, it was great. We're having a good time. And all of a sudden we hear, get your off. I'm not going to talk like a New Yorker right now. You know
You
what I
can.
mean? All right, get the fuck.
We're adults.
And we went, whoa. And I was a very good job. One of the guys that were with me worked for the United Nations. And, if we were caught, our asses were out,
Yeah.
And we would say, oh, my God. So we took our ID. And ID at that time didn't have a picture. It was an ID. So we hear the noise and we hear something else. And we didn't see anything. All we hear was noise. And we're going, oh, we got to get the hell out of here. We got to get out of here, So when I was trying to get out, there was a lot of commotion, a lot of stuff happening. I was trying to get out with my two friends, and I went and I got hit. And there was this very handsome guy, and I looked and I said, hey, you bastard, what's wrong with you? And I got into this thing. He was one of those plainclothesmen. He hit me with a billet. So then,
and good-looking guys too.
All of a sudden, he disappeared. Somebody jumped him, and we didn't know that. We didn't know he was a plane, at that time.
Right.
And so when I was getting out, doing our thing, whatever it was, and all, I was going towards the door. There was a cigarette machine there. I remember there was a little cigarette there, and I looked, and everybody was doing their thing, and I went, my God, this kid, leave him alone. And I was cursed, the whole bit. And they were holding him down. So I went to grab this cop to pull him off and all that. And my friends grabbed me and says, David, we got to get the hell out of here, because if you can lose your job. Yeah. You're going to lose your apartment. You know what I mean? So we got out, and then a whole thing happened outside. But inside, we were rebelling. Us guys were rebelling. We were not in a riot. We were rebelling in the bar. Right. And that's why they say in the bar you were rebelled, and in the street you were in a riot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's how I got there, just by fluke. It was just a fluke. You know what I mean? Like you were talking about the same thing, right? And not only that, the drag queens, oh my God, they were wonderful. They were wonderful. And they fought. Hey, they were tough. No, they were tough. Yeah. Gorgeous and tough. And then I could relate with her because of the black and because of Latino. You know what I mean? Yeah. And then isn't that they knew you were Latino, but we used to curse in Spanish. You know what I mean? And they knew. But I'll never forget that night for that. But I will remember being hit on my neck. It's like here. And then like 20 years later, I had a seizure. I was in show business, and we stayed at the Plaza. We were living in California. And an agent told us to come to New York to do a play and all that. And I said to them, hey, come on, let's have sandwiches and coffee. And we went downstairs and, got sandwiches and all that stuff. Got up to the room, and one of the girls, there were two lesbians, she looked at me and says, David, you're scaring the shit out of me. And I went, bang. Sure.
Grand
mal seizure.
Wow.
And this guy was in the service, and he was into medics. And if it wasn't for him, I think I would have died that day.
Oh my God.
So they went, and they were taking me to a hospital, I heard. He's Portuguese, right? And they couldn't get there in time. So this little Portuguese hospital in Jersey or something,
Yeah.
they brought me this nuns. And here I am, and I was still out. And a doctor came in that was a surgeon for this. He didn't work for the hospital, to visit a friend. And he was told that a young boy, had a seizure, and they think I wouldn't make it. He says, "Let me look." And he looked at me,
You were just
and he says, "David," I got up in the morning and says, "What the hell am I doing in California?" That's how bad it was.
Yeah.
He says, "David, I think you have a tumor between your skull and your brain, probably the size of a quarter, and you've had it for a while, and we got to operate." So he says, "You mind if I do it?" And I says, "Well, sure." The nicest man. And they put me through all this stuff, and then I was operated on. Oh, in show business, I had hair down here. And when we were going into the operating room, I says, "Can you just take the hair off?"
Does Dave the whole
He says, "Dave, we got to take it all off." And here I am, and here, and later on, quite a few years later, we were talking, and we went. He asked me about billy clubs, anything, a bat, and then I said, "Yeah, I was beat up twice. Twice. A friend of mine was opening up a bar on the west side, and I was there, leaving at 1 o'clock in the morning,
same thing.
and the same thing happened. Cops came over in a little car, and called me, "Hey, you faggot, you're homosexual." And David's walking, I was walking. Then I turned around and I said, "Are you talking to me? Get over here." The minute I got to the car, they beat the crap out of me.
Jesus.
Billy Club, they punched me. They went into my pocket. They took 25 cents, right? And nobody in the street stopped. Nobody in the street tried to help.
Right.
Nobody. And here I am laying down. That's the era that it was, kids.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have to understand that it just didn't happen to me. It happened to a lot of us.
Yeah.
A lot. And not only gay boys, lesbians.
Yeah.
I know lesbians too. You know what I mean? Like Williamson said, that was the era. And through the grace of God, I'm a good man, but we lost a lot of dear friends during the AIDS virus.
I want to say one thing about Williamson. If it wasn't for this guy, there would be no SVA. I mean, the time I've known Williamson since we met him in Greenwich Village, he's worked tirelessly. He does so much work, and I know the gay community is not great on giving compliments. We all know that. But this guy, ever since I've known him, the times he's called us, we get cards from him. He's in contact and always on the case of all these agencies that do crap for the
and the public officials.
Yeah, but you get like the Heritage of Pride people. He reamed them a couple of new assholes, which they needed to get.
Yeah.
But the fact is, he's not afraid to challenge people, and he does it constantly. And I, for one, thank him for doing that.
Yes.
And also all the gay pride parades that we did with all the convertibles over the decades. We led the parade until Stonewall 50, when the Heritage of Shame, aka Heritage of Pride, decided not to have Stonewall veterans as the grand marshals of Stonewall 50. We were of Stonewall 25, but that was not any thanks to them. So they picked 5 people that were unknown. It was a total insult. So we boycotted them, and we took the boycott. I should say gaycott. That was my term for it. We gaycotted it in Stonewall 50, and the Stonewall veterans voted that we would have our own event, which we did. at Mirandi Restaurant in the Village.
Yeah.
And that's what happened in Stonewall 50. So we haven't led the parade in the last 5 years. They didn't invite us this year, even so we advised them that we remove the boycott, which they served for 5 years. And also with the conference, we've been having that every year. And last year, the CBS News covered it live. New York One News has covered it live, and it's been in many of the periodicals like the New York Times, the Daily News, and the Post, plus Newsday in Long Island, come to think of it. So I don't know how much time we have, Letty, but we should mention the Stonewall movie by the famous director Roland Emmerich, because he interviewed in person in Greenwich Village before the movie came out to get the composite stories of a lot of the Stonewall veterans. And the movie, it'll be celebrating its 10th year in September. And that's Roland Emmerich, who did White House Down and The Day After Tomorrow and The Patriot with Mel Gibson and Independence Day with Will Smith, my favorite actor. So the movie is available on DVD, and the movie is dedicated, this is what's crucial to everyone here participating, it's dedicated to the Stonewall Rebellion Veterans Association, and that's so listed in the credits. And we also met with many of his producers before the movie came out, of course, and then afterwards, several of us were invited to Hollywood for the premiere of the movie at the Pacific Design Studios in Hollywood, and they made all the arrangements for us, including airplane, hotel, restaurants, everything. So anyone that hasn't seen the movie Stonewall, and the rebellion scene is incredibly reenacted. It's very powerful. So they should get the movie Stonewall, and I guess it's accessible, clips of it anyway, on the internet.
Mhm.
I just want to interrupt for a minute. We're joined by Paul Andrew Lucre, who says Williamson is the most effective LGBT leader for the past nearly 60 years, and a statue to recognize his tireless work for so many decades should be put up in the Stonewall National Monument Park. And Paul,
very nice.
Yeah, Paul is in Provo, Utah. Right now.
And thank you to you, Letitia, from all of us and the ones who aren't here. We'll be seeing them soon, in about a week, as a matter of fact. Thank you for having this program again. You've had several of them, and also for creating the artistic flyer for the SRVA.
Oh, she did it. Oh, wow.
No thanks is necessary. I thank you all. Yeah, it's true. Listen, I've said it always. You know, I was in kindergarten when you guys were changing the world, and you've made the world a better place, because anytime that we all come together and let people live and be who they are, and we all enjoy life without imposing on others, I think is a better time for all humanity. So you guys, really broke through and changed the way people feel and act, and allowed people to be who they are and be accepted. And that's really, really important. So I do nothing. I facilitate, and I'm happy to do it. I'm honored to do it.
Letitia, there's another thing too. We have to honor the guys and the girls that were there that night.
Yes.
Who are gone, right?
Yes.
We knew some wonderful, wonderful people. I mean, we hung around. It was crazy. We hung around. We had fun. We did.
Yes.
All that junk was that junk, that the government and all that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We always had fun. When people talk about Stonewall, they talk a lot about, the rebellion. But let's talk about the guys and the girls and the drag queens who passed on.
Yeah.
Who were there, and they were all such fun. We go to parties in New York City. We have so much fun,
Yeah.
So we have to look at the Stonewall Rebellion as not only what happened, yes, and us crazy kids did our thing, but the ones who passed.
Yes.
A lot of them have passed. A lot of dear friends of ours, Bobby could tell you, a lot of them through AIDS, you know.
Yeah.
But they were
The
good.
original Stonewall Club was like a second home to
Yes.
most people that went there. And then, quite frankly, for some people, it was their main home, believe it or not.
It was their
Right,
safe
you're right.
place.
It was a safe place, exactly.
Yeah.
And we knew a lot of these young boys, and mostly the guys, who were thrown out of their homes and lived in apartments with other guys. Some have lived with 8 guys, 9 guys, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Some lived in the park.
Yeah.
I know that a few of them were always in the subway at night, had no place to go. A lot
Yeah.
of people have to understand that it wasn't just that, how they treated us to a point where they were, to a point you want to commit suicide.
Yeah.
A lot of them did. Some of them did, you know what I mean? So I always want to think of those guys and our friends who died of AIDS, which Bob and I experienced a lot of that in California.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the spirit is there, and their spirit, they're with us, you know.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And on a happier note, let's not leave the program without mentioning what held everyone together at Stonewall, the original Stonewall Club.
Yeah.
Let me say, was the music. No one's
Right.
mentioned the music. Maybe some of the Stonewall vets on the program here, all except for Reverend Bob, the spouse of Stonewall vet David Bermudez, mention some of the favorite artists that you heard in the Stonewall jukebox. We have several CDs out with the songs.
Yeah.
Shangri-Las, Shangri-Las.
That's right. The Shangri-Las were the sweethearts of the Stonewall Club. And you know what, Letty, as an Italian American, you can appreciate this. The Mafia men made sure to always have the song of the Shangri-Las. And why? Because they're a white girl group, which is pretty rare. And also, their songs were like prior to the Stonewall Club for the most part, but they still had the songs in the jukebox, at least one at a time, because of being a white girl group and a very attractive. And that's why Frank Sinatra was in the jukebox too, with the Italian American, and Dean Martin had some songs in there. So it was very interesting.
Bennett.
And who?
Tony Bennett.
Oh yeah, and Tony Bennett. They'd have him in there, and also the main artist at the Stonewall for all 4 years, 1966 to 1969, was Diana Ross in the Supremes.
Oh yeah, yeah, she was big in the Supremes,
and of course Barbara, and the Four Tops, and Martha Reeves and the Vandellas, Shirley Bassey. Any others you can think of?
Yeah, Jimmy Darren. I remember him. Darren. Bobby Darren.
Right.
What was the name of that song?
Italian American.
The Ronettes.
Yeah.
Oh, let's not forget the Ronettes. Exactly.
Oh yeah.
I just wanted to say one thing.
Sure.
I want to say to Wilson and Rusty. Rusty has been so supportive of the trans women for years.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And Wilson is an amazing director. He's one of the first organizations to embrace African Americans, because a lot of the gay organizations did not embrace us.
You're right.
But Wilson did, and he should be very commended. And also, you might be a little jealous, but I live about 7 miles from the original house that Julie Garland lived in as a kid out there in Lancaster.
Wow.
So there's a monument in Lancaster, California. I live about 5 miles from it.
Oh wow.
And it's wonderful. But I also get mad sometimes because the ones who really need to be credited are not credited a lot of time. A lot of people saying they were Stonewall, and I'm not here to knock anybody, but I don't think Stonewall gets enough credit.
I agree.
For what they really have done.
Yes.
And I get so angry when I see people who know nothing about Stonewall. That's why I remained silent for many years, because so many people saying what they don't even know what Stonewall really is.
Yep. That's right.
So I get very angry.
I hear that.
But as I said, Wilson left, but I want him to know, I think he is the most remarkable director, remarkable person. Without him, there would be no Stonewall.
Exactly. Like
and how he embraced African Americans. Many of the organizations didn't want us.
Yeah.
But he did. And that's why I love him so much.
And to all of you, that's what motivates me to keep it going because, like David mentioned earlier, we've lost most of the Stonewall veterans, particularly during the 1980s, to the AIDS war. That's what it
Yeah.
was. And just yesterday, they finally came out with a, what would you call it? If you get this injection twice a year, you won't get AIDS. That's
Yeah.
the best way I can describe
Oh.
it. Yeah, it's just the news was yesterday. It's very ironic during Gay Pride Week. And so that's what motivates me because so many we've lost, including Stormy DeLavre and Emil Griffith and Lecturer O'Mara and Dave West and so many others. Rusty, as you know, were in the parades with us year after year after year.
Ivan, Terry, Dave West, Christina Hayward.
Oh, yeah, Christina Hayward.
Puerto Rico.
And Terry
Ray McCaffrey.
Ray. There's so many.
So many people we've lost.
And I want to say this.
Yes.
You know, at the 50th anniversary, beside the maltreatment we got because they put, when I tried to get to the front thinking we were going to lead the way, it was a bunch of cars, sponsors, corporate sponsors. So, but I want to say on the 50th anniversary, they had this police captain with Hop make this official apology. Well, I have a news flash. Officer Pine and the other officers had apologized to us decades ago at our symposiums, which were held at the LGBTQ Center in 13th Street.
Right.
We had symposiums with the actual officers.
Yeah.
Like Sergeant Toscano, for one.
Yeah.
It truly is. It's heartbreaking that the heritage of, well, what do we, I'm not going to say heritage of shame, has literally forgotten that if it wasn't for all of you, none of this would be possible. None of it. And the fact that they don't highlight you is just.
Well, Williamson, I want to say something. This past weekend, you know, Massachusetts is liberal and all that, but they are so proud of the Stonewall veteran and Stonewall. They are so proud to hear the story. Now, this weekend, a little town over here, a little town next to Provincetown, had its first parade.
Right.
All right.
And it was a march, really.
It was a march. It was wonderful. They had barbecue. They had a band. It was wonderful, you know. They called Bobby up to tell Bobby that they heard that I was a Stonewall veteran and that I was the oldest one. I said, I don't even,
Thank you,
And
Will.
that you're an official in the Stonewall Rebellion Veterans Association. That's important too.
Yes. Oh, no. So they said.
And you're on the executive committee.
You know, so what happened? I said, well, let me tell you the story. There were straight people doing it the first time from this town. What was the name of the town?
Orleans.
Orleans in Provincetown. It was wonderful. It was like, it was just wonderful that everybody did not stay in the street. They got behind the march.
We carried the Stonewall banner with the website on it.
Yes.
And literally everybody in the town stopped watching it and got behind and marched.
That's fantastic.
They were proud to be behind, you know, the banner, and dear friends of ours were, you know, carrying it. But I want you to know that Massachusetts, not because we live here, are so proud. They'll do anything, you know what I mean, to do something. But to call us and say, would you like, I says, well, I have a banner, sure. And I talked about you, Williamson. I told them all about you and what you were doing and what you've
They can
done.
go to the website. Yeah.
Yeah, we told them, yeah.
They have.
And the kids were absolutely, and you know what made us laugh? I got to say this, you know, being the Stonewall oldest guy, right? Every time they did, you know, they did a thing in the parade. At the end of the parade, they had these lesbians playing these congas and all that stuff, and I was towards the front. And this guy gets up there, the nicest guy in the world, and he says, "And I want to say something to you. You know who we have over here? Stonewall Veteran Day."
He said, the oldest surviving Stonewall
And
veteran.
I says, "You didn't
And
need
I
to say
laughed.
that."
And that was Williamson that put that label on it.
That's true. That's true.
But you know,
And
Williamson,
news flash to you all. We just got the renewal this week, by the way, from the #1 gay organization in the world by far. Beside us, we're the soul of it. The Human Rights Campaign just renewed their support of us this week.
Wow.
With a letter and
thank you,
a
thank
check.
you, thank
Yeah.
you.
We're going to raise the flag on that
That's
one.
just one. We don't want to mention too many of them, but that's the top one. So we got that renewal, and they've been supporting us for over
That's
30
good.
years now. So
Wow.
we do have supporters, but we, as you all indicated, we should have many more. And
Right.
most that are with these gay organizations now locally here weren't even born, of course, at the time of the Stonewall. So they don't know much what's going on, and they repeat false information like crazy. They don't know what's going on. If they look at our website, it's pretty obvious. We have profiles of over 30 different Stonewall veterans, including Rusty and Dave Bermudez was on, and about 30 more. So they go to the website. Again, it's www.stonewallvets.org. It's very popular. One day this week, we had over 11,000 verified visits in one day. It's done by an international organization that records the statistics to all websites throughout the world. So over 11,000 in one day. On our homepage, we have a link to the statistics, so you can see it for yourself. And anyone else hearing this, you could see it for yourself. It's a very powerful, interesting, and educational website. Wouldn't you agree, Letitia?
I do. I agree. It certainly has everything that you would need if you were going to write a term paper about the Stonewall
That's right.
Rebellion
Yeah.
and the people who were there. So we're closing in on 90 minutes now,
Wow.
and it's been a fantastic opportunity to speak with you. And Paul Lucre is just heaping good tidings and good wishes and good words for you, Wilson, and for everybody here. But what I'd like to do is I'd like to end with it's 56. It's your 56th conference coming up next week, and
Good.
I'd like to end with you talking to some young people. You've seen a lot.
Yes.
You've watched the world change. So what each of you, we'll start with Anthony, and then we'll go to Bob, and then David, and Wilson, and Rusty, and Christy. What would your advice be to young people today who are coming out and being themselves? And what would you say to help them?
Letty, just for a second,
Is that-
do you want to say when the conference is going to be and where?
Go right ahead.
So the youth can come to it. It's a week from tomorrow, so it's Saturday, February 28th. We always have it on the last Saturday in June, appropriately. And it's at the Church of the Village, which anyone can do a search on them, the Church of the Village. It'll come up. It's a big, beautiful church. And the pastor is going to do the invocation, and it's from 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock. So we have Stonewall veterans coming in from near and far. Besides Rusty out in Suffolk County and Anthony in Suffolk County, both of them, we also have like Erica K. Webster. She's coming in from the state of Washington. And Patty Stone is coming up from Louisiana. And Babalu Candelaria is coming up from Miami. So there's several Stonewall veterans coming from far, and everyone speaks at it, and we take questions and answers. And it's the quintessential gay pride event, that's for sure.
Okay, very good. So Anthony, what would you like to leave our audience with?
Well, I lost my voice. I think for kids in particular, they need to understand that gay pride is something very important and didn't happen all of a sudden. I mean, Stonewall is a tremendously important event. I found it for myself to be the trigger that caused the rest of the world to care about what was already going on in gay rights movements. There are a lot of really good people who have spent many, many, many years fighting for gay rights and all kinds of legislation and stuff like that. And it fell on deaf ears because in the old days, good people didn't risk showing their face in anything that really counted. And it was just kind of the meaningless people that went, to clubs and acted silly and all of that. And Stonewall somehow was such an outrageous symbol after all of the other civil rights things that happened in the 60s. It was our turn. And all of a sudden, the rest of the world became aware of this being a real issue. That gay people needed, and in any event, a lot of people kept working on projects. In fact, I left New York in 1971. I was down in Washington, and I worked with a lot of people who were involved, whether it was Mattachine or changing the nomenclature for the American Psychiatric Association, so we're no longer considered sick people. I mean, there was a lot of stuff going on in Washington that would never have actually happened if Stonewall hadn't gotten the public attention that it did. I mean, the New York Times didn't even use the word homosexual or whatever, or the gay, it wasn't even in the press until Stonewall. So I think it's important to realize the perspective of it all. And, as Wilson said, Heritage of Pride has somehow obfuscated the fact that it's not a commercial thing. It's not a big party where everybody just goes out and gets silly and does a parade. It actually means something. And we've kind of wandered away from that. And the gay community is partly responsible for that because, let's face it, we like a good party. But the thing that I feel and something I wrote for the New York Post, which had kind of a snarky article recently, but one of the things I said there was that the Stonewall Rebellion Veterans Association is a small group of surviving actual participants in that historic event. We try to keep the facts as facts and work to resist commercial, revisionist, profit-seeking ideas. And in other words, we got to get back to business and let's have our party, but let's also realize that what the government is doing is turning us away from everything that we have accomplished in the last 20 or 30 years. And we have to get back to work.
Right.
Excellent. Bob?
Yeah. To build on what Anthony just said, in that era, in the time when we were of Stonewall, we didn't have all these labels for the gay community who were either gays or lesbians, cross-dressers, and there were a couple of drag queens, and there were a couple of people we knew as trans, but that was the whole thing. Now they got non-binary, and I mean there's more labels than the alphabet. And I've talked to a few people, and I've said, listen, please understand, during Stonewall, we didn't look at you as a label. You were there as our brothers and sisters. We didn't judge, I mean, it's a thing where right now they're putting, I'm talking about the younger groups putting themselves in little cubbyholes. I'm this, and I'm that, and I'm that. And they're excluding everybody else instead of saying, I am this. Come join us so you can learn about me and open their arms to our generation, because I sure in the hell don't know what all those labels mean. I mean, somebody says there's something, and I go, oh, God, tell me what that means. And then I want to identify as myself. Fine, I accept you. Tell me what it means.
Right.
And I think that's what they need to know, because all the work that's been done throughout these years is going to go down in smoke if the gay community does not learn to unite and be together the way they were at the time of Stonewall.
Right.
Let me say something. In addition to what I heard is going on up there in Massachusetts, here in East Hampton, 4 years ago, a school teacher worked with the mayor to create the first gay pride march here in East Hampton. So this year was the fourth run of it. Last year, when they found out I was a veteran, they put me in the front there with the flag as kind of a quasi marshal. But this year, John Cameron Mitchell, who's quite a hoot, was the marshal, and it was a wonderful event. It was pouring rain. The weather was terrible, but the police were wonderful. The crowds were wonderful. It was a complete hodgepodge of people, every color you could imagine, every language you could imagine. I mean, the Hamptons is a pretty diverse bunch of people when they all, and to see them standing in the rain, celebrating gay pride for what it really meant was terribly important. And the organization, the guy that organized this thing, it's totally voluntary. It's all on voluntary contributions, no corporate nonsense in it at all. No sponsorships. So, we're headed in the right direction.
Good.
But we got to keep going.
Well, we got to keep going. It takes work.
Well, I was going to say, almost like Bobby was saying, as a couple of us know, being Black, being Puerto Rican, what we went through in the 50s and 60s, because that's the time that we lived, right? And yet we had to be supported. And I remember I went to the Martin Luther King
In
in
Washington,
Washington with three guys. One was Black, I was Puerto Rican, the other guy was Italian. And let's go. We got on the Greyhound bus and we went down thinking it was going to just be Black. All right. We get there. Are you kidding me? It was as white as you can feel. We're going, whoa, we couldn't believe it. And we were very lucky to be in the front because we were there very, very early, And I think of that. I think about how we thought, it's going to be Black. We might not be wanted. And we got there. It was Black and Italian and white, and it was unbelievable. And us being one Black, one Puerto Rican, what we have gone through in our younger years, right? It was not nice. It was not nice. And we took the blunt. And so we said, screw this. We're going to fight you. And that's it, Today, if they don't pull together like we did, right, Williamson? We were a bar of everything and everybody. I used to go to Puerto Rico, and they used to say, oh, yeah, we go to the Stonewall. You know what I mean? We were such a people, like they say in Spanish, familia. Yeah. We were such familia. That when I see this and I see what's going on, and I'm saying, if you just want to be known as whatever you are, I don't care, lesbian, gay, whatever, and you don't combine, we're in trouble.
Yeah.
We're in big, big damn trouble.
Yeah.
And a lot of them say, well, Bobby said it, you don't understand. Well, then teach us. You don't understand what happened at Stonewall. We're teaching you. You see what I'm saying?
That's right.
So hear that, Atish, I think my age, and I hope and I pray that we get a hold, because it's happening, and we start becoming a familia. We start becoming one. We did something in Provincetown a few years back. They told us to talk to some transvestites, right? Transgenders in a little room, and we did. We wanted to know about Stonewall and all. And a lot of them would say, well, you know, guys, you really don't understand. Well, I understand one thing. A lot of you are men, and you're married to a woman, and you have children. Well, okay, that's fine. You know what I mean? I remember we were leaving, and Provincetown has a day of the bear and a day of the, you know, it has all these weekends. Yeah.
Fantasia week.
And we when we got there, we see a lot of drag queens walking like this. You know, hello. So I said, hey guys, before you leave, I'm going to say something. Ladies, whatever. He says, yeah, would you, you know, boobs, bring them up, you know,
Tits
show
out,
yourself,
shoulders back.
show who you are. When somebody doesn't say hello, you say hello, welcome, welcome. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they just looked at me, and I says, because we saw this. We're walking around Provincetown, and you don't want to talk to us. You know what I mean? It's changed a lot. You know what I mean? But you had to see it, and that was something that we felt. Gee, you know, you guys. Well, you know.
Do you think that it's generational too? I mean,
you don't know that you do that.
Yeah.
So
well,
okay. For some reason, we're freezing up. We might be going over the time limit. Wilson, give your piece of advice.
Pardon?
Give your piece of advice. What advice do you have for young people?
Well, the other Stonewall vets that just covered things, I agree with everything that they said because it's all true. But if they want to know what's really going on, for example, they could go to our website, stonewallvets.org. I'll say it again. Or if they're in New York City or in the area and they know about our conference, you're going to put it up on Facebook, right, Letitia?
It's been up. Yes, it's been up.
Oh, it's up already.
Yes,
good.
It's been
well,
up,
everyone listening, if you can promote it more through social media, that would be a good idea. We're covering it through emails and stuff like that. We have an extensive email list of thousands. So them coming in person, we had students that have been coming for years and they always appreciate it. Sometimes a teacher comes and brings several of their students. So I would say they can come to our conference June 28th at the Church of the Village in Manhattan from 4 to 6. That would be ideal if they're actually with Stonewall veterans and hear it, you know, directly from us. Or the website, like you said, that they're doing a term paper or a thesis, they can cover the whole thing, and many have. Exactly. We're contacted by hundreds every single year about getting more information about the 69 Stonewall Rebellion.
Excellent.
That's great. That's great.
Rusty?
Yes, I want to tell the young people to be themselves. Don't let no one else define you.
Right.
And with the political climate, what's happening now, our transgender rights were pulled by the sitting president. And don't think they're not going to come for the L, the G, and the B. Mm-hmm. And like, who is that? Robert said, we're all La Familia. And we have to regroup. We have to stay strong. Do not be afraid. We've been there before. We fought the Anita Bryants, the Pat Robinsons. But don't let no one define you, and resist.
Yes.
Regroup and resist. And all of us that are activists, we are here to guide you.
Right.
Christy, you get the last word, Christy.
Well, I look at Stonewall basically as almost civil rights, period, like the civil rights movement.
Right.
Mm-hmm. We all have to stand up for our rights. Right. And what I would like to see is more of all of us coming together, not just fighting for just gay rights. Let's fight for all people's rights.
Exactly.
Because we're all in this boat together. And what I would tell a young person, love yourself first and know that you are loved. No matter what somebody says about you or how you feel about yourself, you got to love you first.
Right.
And I think that's the lot of young people I talk today, they're ashamed because they don't love themselves. And but I tell them, look at Stonewall, look at the civil rights. You got to, those are good examples of how you stand up and fight for yourself, fight for your rights. And but you know what? I have to be very honest. Me being a trans woman, I have experienced racism, sexism amongst my own gay brothers and sisters. I couldn't go into a club, a gay club, because I was trans at one time.
Yeah.
So if we're going to talk about civil rights, let's talk about all rights. Let's all work together.
Right.
I don't, if I'm not at home with my gay community, I don't get love there. Where am I going to get it?
Exactly.
And so I've also been hurt over the years by the gay communities just as much as the straight, because there's prejudice in all genres. So some gays didn't treat me right either. But on a happy note, we must come together as a family. Gay, straight, bisexual, no matter what you are, black, white, let's all come together and fight for what's right. And I think Stonewall shows a perfect example of that.
Amen.
Amen. And that's a perfect place. That's a perfect place to end, because at the end of the day, we're all individuals, and doesn't matter. All women don't think the same. All men don't think the same. All gays don't think the same. All lesbians, all blacks, all Hispanics, all Italians. We're all individuals. So, what did we lose? Did we lose? We just lost somebody.
Yeah.
Who did we lose? Oh, we lost Anthony. So at any rate, thank you all for being here. Thank you all for sharing your story. It will live on YouTube forever. So please share the link with friends who couldn't be with us. Paul says, I'm visiting my mom here in Provo, and she says all of you are smart and beautiful, and she wants to come back to New York City one day and go to Pride and the SVA conference.
That would be great, and we look forward to it. And thank you, Mother, and especially thank her for having you, Letitia.
And happy Pride to everyone all over the world.
Yes, happy Pride
all over the world.
Absolutely. All right, I'm going to bed. I've had a long day, and it's a perfect way to end it. So thank you all.
Stonewall veterans, we'll see you soon.
We'll talk again next year.
That's right.